Lee.
Members, we will now move on to the roast of the one and only Sanford.
The Senate of the Colorado Legislature, convened in the second regular session of the 73rd General Assembly, hereby extends our sincerest congratulations, commendation, and thanks to Sanford E. Pete Lee, Senate District 11. Senator Lee was elected to serve in the 68th, 69th, 70th, 71st, 72nd, and 73rd General Assemblies, where he represented his fellow citizens with dedication and honor. During his tenure with the Senate, he served with distinction as the chair of the Judiciary Committee and as the vice chair of the Finance Committee. Senator Lee also chaired the Legal Services Committee and served on the Committee for the Examination of the Treatment of Persons with Mental Illness who are involved in the criminal and juvenile justice system, and the Wildfire Matters Review Committee. The citizens of Colorado and the members of the Senate express gratitude for Senator Lee's exemplary service to our great state and wish him well in his future endeavors. Given this 11th day of May, 2022, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado, Steve Fenberg, President of the Senate.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, please be seated. Now begins the trial of Senator Pete Lee. Senator Lee, I had the pleasure of serving with in the House and for much of my time in the Senate, and I struggle to think of a more thoughtful legislator. I think my favorite thing in committee, because sometimes we present bills in committee and we're actually not looking forward to people asking questions about our bills in committee. But I always look forward to it with Senator Lee because it comes from such a place of intellectual curiosity. Just curious about, how you would respond to this or what this piece of this bill means. And that is something that I hope, that I, one, strive to live up to, but two, hope to retain. Because Senator Lee demonstrates it so well. To maintain that level of curiosity, of that intellect, I think we all have something to learn from Senator Lee. I think the only thing that came, the only negative thing that came out of redistricting is that Senator Lee's time is concluding a little bit earlier. And a little bit earlier than I think any of us would have liked. Because Senator Lee has demonstrated that he is an exceptional legislator. He has led the Judiciary Committee through some monumental policy changes and has done it with grace and making sure that both proponents and opponents of any given policy feel heard, respected, and listened to. I have learned so much from you, Senator Lee. I think at one point when we came into the Senate, I sort of served as your mentor, but to be honest, I've learned way more from you than I think you could have ever gleaned from me. I've learned how to be a better legislator, better statesman, and how to treat everyone that I encounter with kindness and respect. Thank you for all that you've given over the years, Senator Lee. We're going to miss you deeply.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Chair, It is a joy to serve alongside you. Because I have, over the course of our time together, I have seen you both treat the Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court and inmates in the Department of Corrections with the same dignity and respect, and everybody in between. Proponents, opponents, casual observers, interns, aides, and general passersby. That level of love that goes into this work is rare, too rare in this business. There are, this year alone, and I've had the joy to work alongside you for 4 years and to learn from you every single hearing. Moments where sometimes you feel like you're drowning under the work and you're like, let me just respond to this email, or let me just, and Chair Lee will be focused in, laser on whoever it is submitting their testimony, wildly ignoring the 3-minute clock. And ensuring that the person who has come to share their heart and soul as to why this policy is good or bad for the state of Colorado has the ability to share their thoughts, to make their voices be heard, and then to see that be reflected by the chair of the committee in saying, thank you for your testimony, and asking questions. That is how we do this work in an iterative way, is by listening to one another. I have seen you over the course of a hearing move. Sometimes that's been wildly frustrating for me. But more often than not, it has been for the good of the people of this state. I have never seen someone work as hard as you, because I know how hard it is to be on judiciary and finance. But colleagues, he is on judiciary, finance, and state affairs. The man is a beast. And he is relentless in terms of being ever prepared, of in the mornings, in our check-ins, to say, well, I just had this question about page 17, line 34. And I'm like, Pete, we got that bill last night. And what he will then say as a follow-up is saying, well, you know, I was just reading this book about this issue, and we'll talk about conversations that he had that piqued a curiosity and an interest 8 years ago when he was in the House, that he then has now developed and broadened out into a lifelong both relationship with the person who testified on that issue, and then also now a learning and a deepening interest. And I just want to say that that is powerful and rare, and we should do more of that. part of the reason that I think that the lobby has as much power as it does is institutional memory. And the fact that you can recall with like encyclopedic memory policies that the Judiciary Committee debated a decade ago that now inform our policy debate and conversation today is extraordinary. I have seen the way, like, as hard as you work, I have also seen your dedication to skiing and your dedication to this idea of work hard, play hard, you know? Of finding ways to decompress and to remember what it is that you love about this state. And I am so, like, I don't know what Judiciary Committee is going to be like without you. I don't know what this chamber is going to be like without you. And I just want to take a moment to thank Lynn as well. Because the way that you two move inside the Capitol and out in community is something that my husband and I try to do. Where we do work in different ways. I put up with all of you guys put up with all of my knucklehead stuff. But it takes a different kind of person to be able to bring opposition together and restore harm. And the work that Lynn does is a power in and of itself. And the way that you use those skills to make lasting concrete policy here in this chamber is just a joy to see. And so I'm like really just so happy to have worked alongside you. And so I got this thing because to me, Pete Lee is always going to be the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And so I got you a gavel that is engraved. And I think on behalf of all of us, we're just really proud and honored to call you a friend. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's hard to say goodbye to friends. And Senator Lee is a friend. He related last night during my eulogy. In our first year in the House, I ran a bill that we know in this building is constitutional carry. I believe passionately in that policy, and I rehearsed my presentation literally for years, looking forward to having the opportunity to run and possibly serve in the House. In House Judiciary that year, Senator Gardner was the chair, and that bill passed out of committee with bipartisan support. I nicknamed it the coat tax, and I think Senator Lee referred to that last night. That bill passed out of the House with 33 Republicans in the majority on a vote of 40 to 25. Senator Lee was not the only Democrat to vote for it that year. That really proved to me that there was something unique about Pete Lee. He was willing to listen to the arguments, as our friend from Denver just described about his ability to chair a committee hearing and be so respectful. Pete also referred to something that became really important to me outside of the Second Amendment, and that was ending the practice of jailing kids over truancy. Proud to work on that issue with Senator Fields and with Senator Lee. How many of you have brought a Supreme Court justice to testify at the Capitol against your bill? Kind of a separation of powers issue. Well, Justice Boatwright, now Chief Justice Boatwright, came to testify against one of those bills. That resulted in something of a study, but it wasn't us that was studying it. It was the judicial branch agreeing to study their practices and report back to us, and they did. So I want to say thank you to Senator Lee for being willing to work across party lines, work across the aisle. In a district like mine, pretty red, Republicans hold every partisan seat. Sometimes we have discussions at home about working across party lines, and it's looked down upon, maybe even condemned. You want a majority, you want to get done what you want to get done, and who cares what the other side wants? It's pretty easy to have that perspective when you're not here. Passing bills on party lines is frankly easy. Passing legislation with bipartisan support is a greater challenge. And I have learned from colleagues like Senator Lee that compromise doesn't necessarily mean you give up half of what you want and I'll give up half of what I want. We'll meet in the middle, and it's like dancing around in a circle and pretending like you're getting somewhere. No offense, but sometimes the sort of high-low negotiations and JVC and appropriations, maybe that's a little easier to do with numbers. When we're talking about words and policy and how it affects people like kids who might go to jail, there's a better way to do it. How can we craft these sentences? How can we compose these paragraphs and build this page differently so that you can support what I support and I can support what you support? Not necessarily giving up half of what you want and half of what I want, meeting in the middle, but finding a better way to do it. Senator Lee knows how to do that. And as I've expressed on a few of these tributes, I remember, I think the first time I mentioned this was in the eulogy to the living Senator Pat Stedman. I think the voters of your district, the voters of your community, deserve to have you back. I do. On that point, a few years ago, there was an attempt to recall. There were a couple of them. And the press and some people in politics kept using the label Republicans. Republicans, Republicans. I had a conversation with President Garcia, but I also had a conversation with Senator Lee out in the hallway out of that corner. And I just stopped, shook his hand, looked him in the eye. And I said, despite all the rhetoric, I want you to know, Senator, that it isn't me. It isn't us. It might be people in your district, it might be political activists, but it isn't these Republicans. It isn't this one, and it isn't these Republicans. And it stopped him short a bit, I think. My perspective was that if the majority of voters in the district that he represents decided that that was the pathway they wanted to go down, if there were enough signatures and the process was actually initiated, and if after a sufficient number of signatures were gathered, and they weren't, but had they been after Republicans in that district identified someone who they wanted to support, then, yeah, reserve the right to get involved. But for our working relationship here, it was important for me that my friend, Senator Lee, understand that these Republicans were not the source of that effort. And he shook my hand and said, "You know what? I believe you. Thanks for saying that. It helps. Because we have important work to do here." It is expected by many on the political left and right outside of this Capitol that we hate each other, that we are here to fight and destroy the other side, and that is fiction. That's nonsense. At least in this chamber, we find better ways to get the work done. We find ways to respect each other. I said last night that I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from all of you, and I am particularly grateful to Senator Pete Lee because he's been daring to vote for things that I care about, and he's been willing to come and have one-on-one conversations with me, not just speaking from the well, but to talk to me about things like restorative justice. And we've talked to each other about truancy. Does it help a young man or woman to put him or her in jail for not being in school? Turns out that today it isn't just rebels without a cause, kids proving that they can skip school and set their own course. No, sometimes it's a young man or woman in a single-parent household, and that parent is addicted to drugs. Sometimes it's a young lady who doesn't go to school because she works at a fast food restaurant to support herself because her single-parent household can't and doesn't do that. Sometimes it's a story like that, a young lady who has a vision of enlisting in the military and coming back and working for her local police department. Sometimes it's a young lady or a young man who's screaming for help and has gone to counselors at the school to ask, is there any way that I can graduate early, that I can get out of this hell that is my life sooner? And sometimes that young lady is told by the school counselors, no, you have to keep coming here every day, and if you don't, we'll put you in jail. Doesn't make sense. Senator Lee stood with me on that, or I stood with him. We stood together. And it wasn't about compromise. It was about a Republican and a Democrat coming together to say, this is wrong. We need to find a way to solve this. And together we did, even bringing one of the Supreme Court justices to the Capitol to testify against what we were trying to accomplish. Senator Lee, I'll miss serving with you. I will miss your sincerity, your honesty, your integrity, your willingness to have tough conversations with people who might view the world slightly different than you, or very different. Selfishly, I'm most proud of your vote for constitutional carry. And you stuck with me on the floor. There was another colleague who isn't here anymore who voted yes in committee and then decided no on the floor. You stand in a rare company. Wes McKinley and Sal Pace were two others. But Senator, it's been an honor and privilege for me to serve with you. This assembly will be, it'll be hard to find someone to fill your shoes and set the example that you have. And as we move off into the sunset to enjoy the rest of our lives, I hope that, again, if you're in my area, you'll look me up. And if I'm ever in Colorado Springs, I'll try to hook up with you, and maybe we can go have a beer at a good craft brewery in your district. God bless you, and thank you for your time here for the people of Colorado.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Lee, I've said this to many other people in the chamber, but haven't said it to you. And that is that you are someone who every time you speak, I end up respecting you more. And so it is it is sad for this phase of your paying it forward to end, because I suspect that I would have respected you even more than I already do. So thank you for your unwavering commitment to social justice, even when it meant standing in some of the hardest positions that you can stand in this Capitol. You oftentimes faced the world and your caucus and had very few friends on the issues that you battled for, but you were standing for people who sometimes aren't even enfranchised to vote, so literally don't have a representative, and perhaps are the people that are most marginalized in our communities. And you, time and time again, made their voice yours. Thank you.
Senator Fields.
Thank you, Mr. President. My dear friend, Pete Lee, we go back a long, long way. I believe we started in 2011 in the House of Representatives. And the relationship between Senator Lee and me was like a movie. It was like Rocky versus Apollo. Maybe it was Action Jackson. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes we had different views as it relates to public policy relating to criminal justice. But what I enjoyed most about you is your emotional intelligence with me. And when I say emotional intelligence, I'm saying that you never approach me like, I'm trying to get your vote. You approach me in reference to sharing the information to gain understanding and to broaden my view and my awareness from a perspective I was not familiar with. So over the course of the relationships from Rocky to Apollo, we have matured and we have moved beyond that kind of battle. I'm trying to think what would be a good, I'll come up with something, another movie analogy. But what I want to say is about the way I believe that we have matured together in this legislative process. We've been to conferences together. We've just done things because we're in the same circles as it relates to NCSL and all the work that you've done regarding restorative justice. And this restorative justice should be something that you should take great pride in, because I remember when the concept was just introduced in the House, there was a lot of pushback to that. And so when I look over my shoulder and I see the acceptance of restorative justice, it has taken you all that time. You've never given up in reference to making sure that people understand what restorative justice is. And it's not a mandate. It's just an opportunity for people to exchange dialogue and experiences as relates to those who've been harmed by crime. You have touched me that way. And you've touched other people to allow them to have that dialogue with the offender. And it really is a powerful thing for people who want to enter into that kind of arrangement. So I want to thank you for doing that work, because I think it's important that you didn't give up when it was hard. It was really hard work. And I saw, at least in the House, the way there was direct and swift opposition to restorative justice. And I see you as a man before your time, because Restorative justice is now playing out in our schools. So before a child is suspended, and we do this in Aurora Public Schools, I attended a session at Hinckley High School, and two students that were in conflict with each other, they brought in another student to mediate the dialogue, the conflict, and they came to a point where they were able to address and resolve that conflict without giving that student a 3-day suspension. That's how restorative justice is taking place in our schools. It's not like you get 3 days out of school. And what good does that do? It just disengages the student from the school and other things. Let's talk about him as committee chair. My God. I just love the way you facilitate, because you are going to ask thoughtful questions. I might be doing this. What is it, my turn? But you're going to ask the thoughtful question, no matter how much time it might take to get clarity regarding the public policies. You were going to ask the question. And so you would dig deep. I would call it digging for gold in a piece of legislation, because he was constantly making sure before he casts his vote on a piece of legislation that he clearly understood the intent of that bill. So you were never in a rush to pass good policy or bad policy. There's something else. There's something going on over there. But I appreciated his thoughtful questions, because it meant that he read the bill. And it wasn't just his bill that he understood. He made sure he understood every bill that was presented to him in a thoughtful manner. So once I learned that was going to be the process in his committee, I went to him first. And I would have conversations with him, and I would tell him about my bill, and he never really said yes or no or that kind of thing. He would ask some questions, and he would do his own research. At the end of the day, he came to his own decision. But there was never any surprise, except for when he asked those questions of the witnesses. And the witnesses would tell them their side of the story, and you would process all the information. And at the end of the day, if it was a good bill for the state of Colorado, good bill for criminal justice, good bill for safety, then he was going to vote yes. Dear friend, your feedback and your coaching of me is priceless. Absolutely priceless. I believe that I've matured because of the conversations that we've had, not just in this building, but on the telephone, off the property or this grounds. And I just value that friendship. I wish you all the best, and I hope that our friendship doesn't stop at the end of this session. God bless you and your family.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I have, again, three thoughts I would like to share with the body about my friend and colleague, Senator Pete Lee. My time with Pete begins at the 2016 House Democratic Caucus retreat. So before I even got sworn in, I got to start to learn about the complexity, the twists and turns, and the good senator's story, including his time working at a meatpacking plant in Ohio, which is one of my very favorite Pete Lee stories. The Democratic caucus is about to lose a very valuable asset, which is a non-country lawyer. Folks, he's the only one we have. and he is going to leave a hole that is going to be impossible to fill. Number 2, I associate Pete Lee with the Platonic ideal, the pursuit of reason. It's been mentioned by several speakers already how insightful his questions are in committee. I absolutely adored getting your questions in committee. I was so excited to get a bill in front of Pete Lee because I knew he had read it, and I knew he was going to cut to the quick and ask the questions about what the bill really did and how it did it. I love it. I am so grateful for you. And it sped up our conversations in committee immensely because of your ability to do that and how you pursue the Platonic ideal. Number 3, Pete Lee is a man of letters. We all know that. Every single one of us in this room knows that. And if you don't believe me, I ask you to track him down and make sure you read his piece on mogul skiing. I shared with Pete one day, we both like to ski at Winter Park. He gets to do it a bit more often than I do, and he's quite a bit better skier than I am. But I shared with him my almost perfect mogul run on a slope that we both know about. And he shared with me his missive, his ability to capture the sublime experience of a perfect mogul run in letters, in words. It is a thing of beauty, and I hope everyone in this room can get a copy. I thank you for your grace, your integrity, your passion. You are a true public servant, and this body will miss you immensely.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Madam President. When I came to the state capitol in 2015, I came because a vacancy committee chose me when my husband passed away. So here I am, brand new at the state capitol, really didn't know anyone, and Dickie Lee Hullinghorst was the speaker at the time, and she said, "Janet, choose your mentor." And I thought, how am I going to choose my mentor? And I really don't know any of the legislators. So I started thinking about what my husband would talk about every night when he would come home. And he always talked about different legislators. And he said, there's this guy by the name of Pete Lee, and he is so smart. He's an academic, and we have really gotten to be good friends. So when I chose my mentor, I said, I'm going to choose Pete Lee. So Pete Lee took this little novice person who really didn't know anything about the legislature, and you really helped mold me into what I believe is a really good legislator, Pete Lee. He gave me what I needed to be successful. He took care of me during one of the most difficult times of my life and made sure that I was successful. I respect him so much for what he stands for. When I came over to the Senate 2 years ago, a mentor was chosen for me by President Garcia. So here we were together again over here in the Senate, and I ended up sitting right next to Pete Lee in the Senate. We had some of the most amazing conversations about legislation, and he said, you need to dip your toe into restorative justice and juvenile justice. And I'm like, what? I'm on the education committee, and my love is education and health. Pete Lee said, no, you really need to dip your toe into restorative justice and juvenile justice. I dipped my toe. I had no idea what I was getting into. But Pete Lee guided me all the way. Some of the bills I ran for restorative justice are so deep in my heart because of Pete Lee, and thank you for making sure that I dipped my toe in the right place. I'm going to miss him so much because we sit over there together. We talk about articles in the New York Times. We talk about food. We talk about policy. We talk about jewelry. We talk about just about anything, but we have that type of relationship that is so deep to the core, and we really care about each other deeply. Pete Lee is not just a master for everyone down here at the state capitol. He's always out in the community doing what he needs to do. He handed me this flyer today because he knows how much I care about restorative justice. And he's going to be a guest speaker at a restorative justice high impact celebration because he cares. There's a young man who, there's a woman whose son was killed when he was 3 years old, and he was killed by a juvenile in a drive-by shooting. And Pete told me about this situation and how this lady by the name of Charletta took that pain and grief and transformed it into forgiveness, restoration, and redemption. Pete, I will never forget you telling me about this lady, and then the fact that you brought me this flyer today brings it all back to me, because you helped me turn my grief into justice and into what I need to do for others. So I will never forget you. You know we're going to stay in touch. No, I'm not going to learn how to ski, but I will meet you up in the mountains for a drink after skiing. But you have made such a difference in my life. I am going to miss you tremendously, and you know you're not rid of me yet. Thank you for everything you've done for me, Pete.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Madam President. Pete, you know politics is a contact sport, and I'm in many, many ways grateful that you and I will not be in full contact in this next election cycle. As sad as I am to see you go, I'm glad that you and I won't be at loggerheads over a political race. And I'm hoping that we can actually make good on the promise that we will ski together at Winter Park. That's something we have had shared real estate up there, shared interests up there, and we need to get on a slope together. I will look forward to that kind of sport, less contact, but good sport nonetheless. Colleagues, when I think of Pete Lee, I think of three things quickly: deliberator, student and professor, both at the same time, and a restorer. As a deliberator, I have experienced both the House, you weren't on Ed, but you were Judiciary Committee. We were on Ed together as well. House Education Committee, House Judiciary Committee, which is notorious for the absolute longest hearings. And I believe it was actually Chair Kagan to whose feet I may lay this at, but the longest hearing of my life was a House Judiciary Committee hearing, which you participated in, even if you were not the chairman, that ran until 5:23 a.m. As we left the building, the sun was coming up. It was one of those kinds of hearings. In no small part because Pete Lee is a great deliberator. He cares, he thinks, and he wants to hear every side in the full extension of that perspective that is available. And I appreciate that. Even at a bleary-eyed 5:22 a.m., I still appreciated that. Student and professor. You heard a prior speaker accurately say that he's, he is truly an exemplar of the Platonic ideal and also a man of letters. In this mic about 3 days ago, I misquoted and misconstructed a statement. And I care about words and letters and quotes as well. I said that consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. And I attributed it to John Maynard Keynes. Well, in about 13 seconds, I got a text from a friend, and this is a friendly text because we interact on this kind of stuff all the time, and said, not only did you misquote, but you misconstructed. It's actually a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. And it was Ralph Waldo Emerson, not John Maynard Keynes. So I appreciate learning from the professor, who is also a student. Keynes did say, when events change, I change my mind. What do you do? And I think that that is a clever, similar concept, but not the concept I was trying to get at. A restorer. Now, Senator, we're in recess, right? Senator Buckner, you are not the only person whom Pete Lee has said you should tip your toe in the pool of, help me here, restorative justice. That's not, I'm just trying to fight with my technology here to get it where I can actually see what I want to do. Colleagues, if you pull open your phone and fight with it like I'm fighting with mine right now, you will see the definition of, doggone it, why is this giving me so much static? Because it's a picture, that's why. Restore. Now, and it's worth it. I typically wouldn't fight with technology that long if it weren't worth it. It's actually worth it. To restore, to bring back into existence or use, re-establish. That's the primary definition. To bring back into existence, reborn, new life. Now I'm starting to tear up here. To bring back to an original or normal condition, that's the second entry. It's the way it was, it's the way it should have been. The third entry has two pieces. To place in a former position or location, to put someone back in a former position or role. And then the fourth definition doesn't speak as clearly to the human condition, so I will let that go. But the point is, the human elements of restoration, redemption, I think it's what we all seek to find. We all want to be loved. We all want to love. We all want to be restored when we make it wrong. What a beautiful, honorable thing to continuously fight for. So, I'll miss you in the chamber. I won't miss you when I'm losing debates with you. I will miss you when I'm misquoted and nobody calls me on it, or when I misquote, nobody calls me on it. But let's not miss each other. Let's stay in contact. Pete Lee, I appreciate you.
Senator Pedersen, would you like to go? Senator Pedersen, would you like to go? You are.
Thank you, Madam President. Oh, Pete Lee, sweet Pete. I wish Davis and Ian are on their way, and I wish that they were here because my husband and I are big fans of Pete. I served on the Judiciary Committee my first year as a freshman. I was with Daniel Kagan as chair and Pete Lee as vice chair. And I got mixed responses as, wow, they're really impressed with you, or they're trying to, that you must have done something very wrong. I don't know which one it was, but we had some of the most lengthy, contentious bills when I look back at 2013. Sitting in Judiciary with John Buckner and Mike McLaughlin on a memory while we were hearing a divorce bill on Valentine's Day. I think it was 11 o'clock at night, and Ian brought me my favorite salad into committee. But I learned so much from Pete Lee sitting on his committee, and have had the opportunity to really get to know him outside of the building as well. So you all know that Pete Lee loves cookies. He has a huge sweet tooth. I'm glad that you're very active. And he's also an amazing skier. So he started out his life after college as a ski bum, and he was up at Mary Jane. And he is just an incredible skier and instructor. He actually taught Ian how to ski. My husband moved here from New Jersey, and so he was not a skier. My brothers jokingly called him an indoor cat. We've been working on that, trying to train him to be Colorado ready for a long time. But Pete Lee took the time for numerous days to take Ian up on the slopes and teach him how to ski. I think you also brought him into a black diamond one of his first days, but he survived, so you did a good job. But Pete Lee is one of the best people that I know, just truly what an amazing human being you are. I know you'll always be my friend. I know we'll always keep in touch. You'll also still pick Ian up for skiing when I ask when he's in need of a break. And I look forward to the day that you get to take Davis up on the slopes and teach him as well. So
You are one of my great friends, Pete. I love and admire you, and thank you for your service. You really are an asset. We are going to, this building is going to miss you, even though I know I won't be here either. It's been an honor.
Senator Cook?
Okay.
Senator Gardner, have you gone yet? Sorry, I think I skipped.
Thank you, Madam President. Appreciate it. You know that saying, politics makes strange bedfellows? That is certainly the truth, in our case especially. And, you know, we've like, again, been tossing around the word friend a lot, and I think it really does apply. I ran into Pete just yesterday. We're both in the hallway, and kind of stopped him, and I said, you know, Pete, I'm going to miss you. I said, it may sound odd, it may sound strange coming from me, but I'm truly going to miss you. And he replied back pretty much the same thing. And because I think we have a mutual bond, even though we're on opposite side of the issues a lot of times. I think that actually forms a bond. It's kind of like, I don't know, two boxers in the ring. You know, they duke it out for 12 to 15 rounds. And at the end, they have this mutual respect for each other, and they have this bond that they got through that competition and through those fights. And when I say fights, I kind of use that loosely. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions and a lot of arguments through the 4 years. But I got to tell you, if you look up the word gentleman in the dictionary in Webster's, you're going to see his face, because he truly is a classy gentleman. I give him a hard time at times, and like when he gave that story when after one of the bills I voted for in committee came, he told it correctly. He goes, hey, thank you for supporting my bill. And I said, Pete, not all your bills suck. And and he kind of got a chuckle out of it. And I got to be honest with you, I felt bad. I thought, oh man, I shouldn't have said that. And so the next morning when we came down the floor, he's over at his desk, and I go, hey, Pete, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. And he kind of chuckled. He goes, no. He goes, that was great. He goes, that was one of the best lines I've heard this whole time down here. And so I really appreciated that. Well, he got back at me because about 2 weeks later, he voted for one of my bills in committee. And I went up to thank him, and he laid that compliment back on me. I said, hey, Pete, thanks for voting my bill. He goes, well, not all your bills suck either. And, you know, give him a hard time, you know, enjoy, you know, kind of a playful hard time. And he's always got that smile on his face that he had just now. And it's been a fun time working with him. I admire him. You know, we hear, oh, sorry, Pete, my 3 minutes is up. Sorry. See, that's what 3 minutes is. All right. All right. Well, I don't recognize that. I know. I know.
Does the witness have anything they'd like to add?
You know, we hear about the copious notes he takes, and unless you see it, you just can't comprehend it. If you're sitting in committee with him, I mean, he has his head buried in that notebook, and he is just writing. I don't know what the hell he's writing, but he is just writing and writing. I'm thinking, Pete, get a tape recorder, and but he just keeps writing. And so much so that the staffer for Judiciary on our last Judiciary Committee meeting bought him a journal, basically, to write everything in. And so, like I said, unless you see it, you don't really, yeah, okay. I'm here to tell you, he does write notes, and he does ask questions, thoughtful or otherwise. He just asks a lot, and I sometimes sit there and go, Pete, you know this bill's going to pass, right? And but he continues to ask questions and take notes, and I have to admit, I really respect that about him, because he does care. He's a true believer, and in what he believes in, and that's why sometimes we don't agree, but because I'm a true believer in what I believe in, but he's always been a gentleman to me, and he's always been respectful, and you can't ask for anything more than that. I'll never forget one committee. It was actually Julie's bill, and I think it was on private prisons or something. And Pete was the chair, and he stopped the committee, and I think stopped for about 2.5 hours so that we could work. At least 2.5 hours, and so we could work it out. So Julie got with Bob and I and some of your members, and we worked out these amendments and right there during committee, and came back 2.5, 3 hours later, and we got it done. And I think it came out unanimous. And that's the kind of leader Pete is. He wants a good product, and he wants to work together. He'll come over to me on some bills, and even though I know he knows that I'm not going to support him, and he'll tell me about them, and he goes, "Hey, can I get you to sign on to this?" And you go, "I don't think so, Pete, but thanks for sharing." But he does. He wants collaboration. And he wants to work together with both sides. And again, I can't tell you how important that is and how much I respect him. And like I told you in the hallway yesterday, I truly am going to miss you. You know. Yeah. Thanks, buddy. Thanks, Pete. Again, thank you. You've been great.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Madam President. I wondered if I was going to speak today, and I thought long and hard about it. I spoke when Senator Merrifield departed, and so I thought, well, I can probably do this. I just want to think of it as restorative justice, Senator Lee.
Good, very good.
So one of the first things you taught me in your first session here at the General Assembly in the House when I chaired House Judiciary Committee, and this was a hard-learned lesson, much to your delight, of which you remind me just frequently and periodically with great gratitude. And the lesson I learned is, when you're in the majority, never lay over a minority member's bill, or else it will haunt you for the rest of your time in the General Assembly. And just to rub it in some more, that member will stay around and come and thank you for laying his bill over so that restorative justice can be in every nook and cranny of the Colorado Revised Statutes. So I'm already feeling better, Senator.
It's therapeutic, isn't it?
I'd like to have reparations when we're done, and we might do that over lunch or a libation. Seriously, Senator Lee came to the House. We have endured each other's chairmanship back and forth and have formed a close relationship in all of that time. What is remarkable, I think, about our mutual legislative careers is that if you were to take the time, it would take a great deal of time, but if you would go through the bills that particularly were judiciary bills when we were in the same chambers, you would find as many in which we were co-prime sponsors as there were that Senator Lee or I was a prime sponsor and the other was an adamant and firm no, which should be a lesson to all of us and to our successors and to those in our parties who will eventually replace us, that each and every bill should stand on its own, because your opponent in 1 hour and maybe in 1/2 hour will be your staunch and firm ally on something in the next. And what you and I have, I think, found the most common ground on is the administration of justice and ensuring that our court system, and this is not a new thing, although it is of heightened interest today, we have always collaborated to ensure that the people of Colorado had access to our courts, that they received fairness and justice in our courts so much as the system can provide. You have always been a man of your word, and as I hope each and every one of us do, I have watched you grow in your skills as a chairman to the most remarkable performance. That's probably not even the right word to call it a performance, but the most remarkable of demonstrations when the Reproductive Health Equity Act was heard. As Senator Gonzalez said, I have to say that my constituencies who were opposed to that bill had found a less than professional treatment and greeting in the other chamber, and came to our committee expecting that they would be not listened to, not heard, and not treated with the fairness that our process should pride itself in. And you did such a great job of that. I was impressed, thought to myself all day and all night and into the morning that if I should be so fortunate again to be a committee chair, that was the kind of skill and courtesy and everything that goes with it that I would want to be doing and emulating. And that's what makes our jobs here mutually, no matter what our views are, so important to the people of Colorado. You did it so well that some people stopped me outside of the hearing room when I took a break, and they said, "Do you think we can get the vote of the chairman? He looks like he's on our side." And I said, he's being highly courteous and, giving you the respect that every citizen deserves when they come before the Senate Judiciary Committee. But I don't think we'll get his vote. But I'll try. So I hope, and I recall you telling me a while back, I say you're a man of your word, and you are, but you don't keep it to yourself. We often don't do that. I remember you telling me when you were in the House, you weren't going to run for the Senate, you were going to go ski, something along those lines. I said something similar, and here I am. I hope you have and make time to ski, enjoy your family, and remember fondly, and sometimes get a chuckle, and sometimes grind a little bit of molar about things that happen, but always remember that we have done, and I know you have done, the very, very best for the people of Colorado. I hope as you finish out your service in the interim on the interim commission on the independence of judicial discipline, that we do some of our best and finest work for the people of Colorado. I look forward to doing that with you before your departure, and I will miss you next year. Steel sharpens steel, and I will miss being sharpened every day, and it'll be left to Senator Gonzalez to do this. I know she's up to the task, though, so I'll miss you, Pete.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Senator Lee, 4 years ago, and many of you either are new here or not, Judiciary is the longest standing committee with the same members, and all of, sort of Bob and Senator Lee, or Senator Cook, we all came in and we've all been on Judiciary together, and we all came in with a lot of things, and it was surprising to me to see the changes that we got to make for policy for people, to learn, to get to know you, my colleagues, your ability to build consensus, which I built really strong relationships with Senator Cook, because of the clock watching. So, whether it was in policy, bringing people together, or us together as legislators was always a great thing to do. But some of the greatest things I've seen from you and I respected was in my second year, was my first opportunity to be a chair of a committee. And for me, it was taking what I learned from you and the committee you ran. And like the good senator from El Paso County said, making sure people feel they're heard and listened to, whether you agree with them or not. People walking out of committee knowing that their voice was heard is a very important thing. And I carried that on to the Business, Labor, and Technology Committee. Whether we knew how a bill was going to go or we stood, people's voices matter, and you always showed that. Your love and respect for restorative justice, as somebody who comes from the treatment field, I believe in all that stuff, and I know we've had conversations of all the nuanced pieces of it, and sometimes in awe of your ability to get a lot of work in that space done, sometimes in awe of your ability to try to put it on every policy that came across the desk. I was worried that maybe that would happen on my class action lawsuit reform. Maybe we needed to put some restorative justice in that after the class actions ended. There's a bill for us to work on next year. We could probably restorative justice in every policy we do in the state of Colorado, the Pete Lee bill. But I just wanted to say thank you. You made me a better legislator. You made me a better thinker. I don't disagree with what anybody said before we came here. You don't go in front of in any committee Pete Lee's on and not ready to talk about your bill, because as somebody who has, sometimes we rush these bills and you walk in and, are you ready for this bill? I was like, I don't know. Pete's in there, and what question is he going to ask me? So I don't know. But you were a thoughtful legislator. You were a thoughtful leader. The work you did matters, and the people you've touched across the state of Colorado will show in your legacy. So you should be very proud of the work you've done. And I for one, am a better legislator because of the work you've done. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Senator Corum? Senator Corum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, I apologize. I'm a rookie at this. I'm not used to this, but I will be very brief. I wanted to talk about Senator Lee. Senator Lee and I came into the House of Representatives together, and not knowing that sidewalk senator, attorney, or representative from Colorado Springs, and the redneck cowboy from Western Colorado, and you know what? It was something that you learned right away, that you don't have to have enemies in this building. You can agree, you can disagree. We've talked about just don't be disagreeable. And Senator Lee, when I came into the Senate, took Senator Roberts' appointment. I was asked what committees I wanted to be on, and I told them, and they said, well, you're on Judiciary and Finance. And anyway, we somehow that seemed to work out, that I got on Ag. And but the question was, when first asked, what committee do you not want to be on? And I said Judiciary, because it was totally out of my wheelhouse. I'll talk agriculture, I'll talk energy, I'll talk transportation, I'll even get into health issues. But Judiciary was not my game. And Senator Gardner, Senator Lee, Senator Cook, I got to tell you, my experience on that committee, watching you and you and you work, I guarantee you three gentlemen were responsible for making me a better legislator. Because I think that's important. I think it's important that you learn how to operate in an area that you are not comfortable. It makes you educate yourself. It makes you listen. It makes you learn. And Senator Lee has certainly been a part of that. But just the fact that we can sit down and visit. You know, you go back into your district and they think, he's a Democrat, you must hate him. He's a Republican, you must hate him. That's not true. That's not true. We in general are working here for what we could perceive to be the best interest of Colorado. Now, we do not always agree what is the best interest of Colorado, but we work forward. But I've got to let you know that there's another side of this city attorney that you don't know. He's a mule skinner. Yep, that's what it said, the mule skinner. One of my best friends when I came into the House of Representatives, and it was a 33-32 Republican majority, was a Democrat, although he was a registered Democrat. I'm not sure he was a Democrat, but Wes McKinley, representative from Southeast Colorado. And Wes, I learned a lot from Wes also, because Wes was always true to himself and true to his district. And, you know, the name behind your name didn't matter. It was what you were going to talk about. And Senator Lee has, I think he has given me a great lesson in that there's always two sides to a story. And he is truly a friend. I am saddened that that he is not going to be here, because he's still got a little fuel in the tank, and he's ready to operate. And I just hope that you do not disappear from the things that you are so passionate about, because you have a message, you have a way of delivering that message, and I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to work with you and call you a friend for 12 years. Thank you.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam President. Will the witness please approach the bench? Without further ado, colleagues, the one and only Senator Lee.
Will the good senator please turn off his clock? That's a tough act to follow. I truly am humbled by all of the comments from all of you. I'm honored. It truly has been a high privilege and a distinct honor to serve in this august assembly, to be elected by the people and entrusted with their faith to develop policy for their future is a sacred endeavor. It's a public trust, a grave responsibility, and an honor beyond measure. During the past 12 years, I've made some lifelong friendships and developed deep and abiding relationships. My own life has been enriched by knowing and working with each of you. You are all a truly remarkable and extraordinary group of men and women, and I will never forget any of you. I have carried bills with most of you, disagreed with some, but always found common ground where we can work together, where we can collaborate. I only wish that the public could see the dedication, the commitment, and the sincere goodwill exhibited by each of you as you work to make this state greater. They don't understand out there how collaborative we really are and how many of our bills are bipartisan and supported. I cannot leave without remarking on one probably unanticipated and to some incongruous relationship, but is a deep, abiding, and respectful one that I honor, that with Senator Bob Gardner. We have, despite disparate worldviews, but a shared understanding of the foundational criticality of the judicial system with its imperfect elegance, reverence for the Bill of Rights, the Fourth, the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, the Eighth, and the 14th Amendments. The second's kind of important too. As Senator Gardner alluded to, he and I, 1 year, shared more bills together than any two other legislators in this chamber. We are working now with the vice chair and other members of the Colorado Discipline Commission, David Prince, who Senator Gardner and I both joined in nominating 2 years ago to the Supreme Court, twice. He has been the Judiciary Committee chair and taught me remarkable lessons. He's been the ranking minority member of the Judiciary Committee chair and also taught me remarkable lessons. Our collaboration has been a touchstone of my life, and I will always honor you for helping me with that. You alluded also to my early endeavor as a first-year legislator to pass restorative justice. I knew I had an ace in the hole because Mark Barker, a Republican on the Republican-dominant committee, had committed to me that he would support the bill. So I knew I could get it through. But what I was concerned about was the significant opposition from the district attorneys and COVA. So I asked leave of the chair with trepidation and fear in my heart to give me leave to continue the bill for a week to work with the stakeholders. You granted that request. I came back a week later with the support of the district attorneys and COVA and got a unanimous vote out of the committee, I think except for Senator Sonnenberg. But you are open to the possibility of restorative justice, and I will be ever grateful for that. Another somewhat incongruous relationship, which we have talked about a couple of times, is with the sheriff. He's been my cohort and taken me into areas of which I was not familiar. I worked in the criminal justice system with defendants, knew police, worked with police, but never got an intimate, deep understanding of the philosophical touchstone of police until I worked with you. And you gave me that. It made me a better legislator. It made me create better bills with more balance towards victims. So I thank you for that. People talk about disagreeing respectfully without being disrespectful or disagreeable, and you've done both, so thank you for that. Rhonda Fields, has Rhonda returned? She has. Also, an extraordinary influence on my life. You alluded to it. We came here together 12 years ago. We have had different life and judicial experiences. We have different perspectives on the impacts and paths towards healing for victims. But I believe both of our views have been honed by this deep, emotional, and mindful conversations that we have had for over a decade. I honor you and thank you for all of that. And Madam Vice Chair, who I have gotten to know as a friend, collaborator, soulmate for 4 years. We communicate telepathically, not so much on the phone. You are my lifelong friend, my sister. You who have never said no to a request of mine for anything. You have deepened my understanding for and commitment to those who are the least among us in our communities. So thank you for that. On a grander scale, every day when I walk into this building, I am awed and inspired by its magnificence and its significance. I read the Thomas Farrell poem that begins, "Here is a land where life is written in water. The West is where the water was and is." And if any of you look at that poem carefully, you'll note that it's 16 lines with a couplet at the end. It is, in fact, a Shakespearean sonnet. And I look at the 9 murals circumscribing the first floor of the rotunda, and it reminds me of our rich and textured history, beginning with the native people and the pioneers, our interdependence as rural and urban, and our not too certain future unless we address this most fundamental of needs, water in Colorado. I remember the final couplet in those murals, somewhere along the lines of, "Today will be a long, long time ago." Through my 12 years here, I've seen the circles and cycles of life among our friends and colleagues, births, marriages, and passages. Jesse, Brittany, Steve, who have given children, significant health issues, COVID. Where's Priola with his leg propped up that he broke skiing in the house for months? He was disabled. Kerry Donovan getting married during the time we've been here. There you are on the other side. And the loss of our beloved colleague, John Buckner, and our friends, Todd Harriet, Debbie Haskins, Pat Teagarden. The legislature is a microcosm of our community. This has been the greatest experience of my life, to have been part of this for a short time. During this time, I've learned an extraordinary amount, not just about the staggering complexity and variety of issues impacting our state that we face as policymakers, from health and education to infrastructure and environment, air, water, to criminal and juvenile justice. I've been more acutely aware of how our everyday decisions palpably impact our constituents on a daily basis. The experience has heightened my appreciation for compromise, for concession, for collaboration, how bipartisanship improves policy, and how the best legislators are the ones who can listen respectfully to all sides and fashion win-win solutions. I have learned that transformation can occur incrementally or dramatically, and that we don't always get it right. Having personally passed almost 190 bills, I hope I got it mostly right most of the time, with the help from my incredible allies like Maureen, Rebecca, Christy, Tom, Tim, Lauren, Tristan, and others. We will get it right. As my friend of 12 years, the minority leader, will probably note, we, the 5 of us who came in here together, have done this for 1,440 days, 12 years of 120. Yeah, there's a couple extra sessions thrown in there, while serving the people for 4,380 session days, and considered some 7,000 bills, while taking, according to Paul Weissman, about 5,000 votes a year. I have learned that none of this would be possible without the cooperative partnership with the amazing nonpartisan staff at the Capitol. OLLS and Ledge Council are the best staff I have ever worked with in almost 50 years working in law offices and for Fortune 500 companies. I have to single out Julianne Jensen, Bo Pogue, Katie Rudebush, the inimitable Julie Pellegrin, Jane Ritter, Michael Dorr, Jerry Berry, the JBC staff led by Carolyn Campman, the Capitol staff led by Cindy Markwell, the front desk, the enrollers, the sergeants, and those who clean and polish this building to give us such pride in this place we inhabit daily. You all make us look good. And thanks to the lobbyists who are integral to this process and help us to understand the nuance and the complexity and provide the institutional memory. When I reflect on this time of service, what I am most proud of is to have introduced the concepts of restorative justice to this General Assembly as an option, as an alternative to respond to and redress the issues of crime, violence, and trauma. Having worked in the criminal justice system for decades before coming here, I have seen how a one-size-fits-all approach to punishment and retribution has resulted in the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world. Communities that are less safe, not more safe, than many of our Western allies, and a 50% recidivism rate, with half of inmates returning to prison within 3 years of release. I have been part of a movement to promote restorative justice as an alternative that has proven successful 95% of the time by promoting personal responsibility and accountability and healing the harm caused to victims in the community. I've also seen major significant policy initiatives over these 12 years. The repeal of the death penalty, repeal of felony murder, the authorization of marijuana after Amendment 64, and civil unions and women's choice under RIA. We've seen significant police reform in response to the deaths of George Floyd and Elijah McClain. We've passed momentous, award-winning, transforming safety bills to put community at the center of public policy and public safety. We passed gun safety legislation, including magazine bans, ERPO, gun show loophole closure, and background checks. We have attempted to address climate change, reduce greenhouse gases, and clean up the air and the water and in our environment. We repurposed the Oil and Gas Commission to protect people and the state. We engaged in significant election reform with mail-in ballots, drop buckets, same-day registration, and vote centers, where we have the highest or second highest voter turnout rate in the nation. We should be proud and protect that legacy. We have 500 children fewer in youth detention than 10 years ago, and we gave them all the right to counsel. We provide universal kindergarten and pre-K, and this year alone spent $500 million on mental health and substance abuse treatment programs and housing. Reminiscent of Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And we in the legislature have responded to the times. We saw the assassination of Tom Clements, the executive director of DOC. We saw the Aurora Theater shootings. We saw the Great Recession and an astounding recovery, and we saw a pandemic unlike anything we've ever seen. And we have responded to each of them to the best of our ability. So I am enormously grateful to all of you who taught me so much and have been part of this unique experience available to such a few of us. I leave gratified, proud, sad, wiser, 10 pounds heavier, two shades grayer. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you. Thank you.